can they also be deeply rooted in their spiritual center and move from a place of consciousness, even on the battlefield, even in those spaces of high tension where your life is literally on the line? And that rooting for me is what was fascinating. It was like, okay, there's something here, there's something. And that was what kind of sparked that intrigue in me. And then I was researching, and what I learned is that whatever you're singing to, your beloved, comes from your heart center in music that you've written that correlates with your emotions and speaks those emotions, but through the sound of vibration and frequency and not through words. So that's the place to attain, is get to the place where you can compose your own emotions into musical language and transcend. It's like, oh, this is cool.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Illuminating Dialogues number 17, where I have the very special honor and pleasure of talking to Jasvir Kaur Rababan today. How are you, Jasvir?
I'm very well, thank you, Jhoty. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much for coming on and your generous time. I'm so excited to go through all your experience, the wisdom to share with the viewers as well. But before we go on to all that, I'll give you a short introduction for the viewers who are not familiar with you. So Jasvir Kaur Rababan is a leading expert in Sikh Sacred music with over 20 years of experience as a performer, teacher and scholar. Jasvir Kaur is an executive coach and speaker, helping people shift their mindsets and empowering them through her company, Be Immortal. Jasvir Kaur is also a community leader who founded Kaur Voices, a platform and podcast to create safe spaces for victims of harm. Jasvir Kaur also received an MBE, Member of the Most Excellent Order of British Empire, from the royal family for her generous spirit of service and dedication. As I read that, as I come across your posts, just so inspiring for me as an individual, as a coach, as a Sikh as well. So just want to thank you for all you do, and excited for this dialogue today.
Thank you, Jhoty. Me too. I'm very excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
Awesome. So before we delve into music, how it can elevate our soul, how it can take us to different emotional states, some of the experiences maybe we've had in the community and society, and how Gurbani and Sikhi is a thread that runs through this. This podcast is called Illuminating Dialogue. It's really a platform to have a flow of meaning, a dialogue, to venture into a space maybe where we haven't gone before. As coaches, we're familiar with that. So with that being said, my first question would be, what lights you up?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. What lights me up? Life. Without sounding corny, I think everything around us is something to constantly be appreciated. We can always take for granted everything that is constant and consistent around us. So nature, animals, life, people, smiles, laughter, those are all of the things that I appreciate in my everyday that bring me joy. That's what brings me that lightness inside of me.
That's amazing. And yeah, like as you say that, spring, summer's here, I can feel that life coming out in the environment as well. And so I'm really, really keen on, we're both coaches as well, and I'm quite keen on helping people achieve that purpose, helping them achieve that potential. And I feel that's something, somehow, people are not tapping into that nowadays. And I feel really inspired that you started this movement almost, and by your own journey of how you're going into the music side and Sikhi as well. So I'm wondering if you could share with the viewers how you really started on that journey. What really sparked this journey of transformation and well-being for you?
I don't think I had a choice. I think choosing the path of Sikhi,
Mm,
which means to be a student of life, you kind of sign that contract in the small print that I'm going to continue to evolve. I'm going to continue to grow through my life, through my existence. I'm going to continue to upgrade my internal operating system. And I want to be the best version of a human that I can. And
mm,
that means showing up every day ready to learn, ready to be humbled by life, by people, by experiences, knowing that I still have work to do. And um, stepping away from that idea of being perfect and just knowing that how I am in this moment is enough. And all I need to be right now is in this moment. And I think the commitment to my path of faith of being a Sikh has been my North Star. It's been my guiding force to allow me to continue to learn. And then on the journey, I got to come across many beautiful souls and some who felt I could add value to their experiences of existing in this world and being alive. And then I had the opportunity to start sharing. So first I was in the classroom taking my notes and then sharing with other people like, hey, this is how you could do it a little bit easier. Or, here's a shortcut I found. See if this works for you. It worked for me. And that kind of sparked this joy of recognizing how impactful something as simple as sharing an experience can be. And then I was doing other work at that time. I was teaching, I was lecturing,
mm,
and that brought a different sense of joy, which is I think it's a different level of coaching because when you're educating and you're informing, you have to have the resources and the information to back it up.
mm,
Here, this is about the lived experience. It's taking the book off the shelf and embodying whatever that knowledge is and living it, and then saying, okay, well, this was my experience with it. This didn't work for me. Did it work for you? And it's not that we're always going to have the exact same experience, but it's just holding space for the differences of experience and the differences of how we navigate through life. And that just continued to I think bring me more passion and more joy. And then I realized that, okay, I need to do other work out there because not everybody's going to come into my classroom or into my lectures at a university. I need to go out there. I need to make this information that I've been blessed with more accessible to people out there who need it, who may possibly be struggling with their experiences. So that is what brought me to the path of becoming a coach.
mm. And it's so amazing as you say that. I resonate with so many different things, especially that perfectionism part, because
Mm,
often in that pursuit of trying to, even that humble pursuit of trying to help people, often we can get sidelined by that
yes. Yes.
perfectionist approach. You know, the book almost says this, so I have to be by the book. But I love that you shared that. Hey, this is my experience. How do we put the book away and say, okay, how do I share that? So how did that word "be immortal" come about?
Mm. What does it make you feel when you think about it?
I think as a human, it actually makes me feel that I'm tapping into something deeper, something timeless, something that, like we say in actually the Moon Mantra, is Nirba Nirvair. It's like something that is immortal, something that's fearless, but it doesn't come out of hate either.
Mm,
And I feel often, and as a coach as well, I feel often we have something deeper to share.
mm,
And it could be perfectionism, it could be people pleasing, it could be, we had Dr. Jasvir Mahil on, we were talking about is it, in our community as well.
mm.
But being immortal, it's like that deeper thing, essence, spark within us that transcends all of that. And that's what it means to me.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And my connection with it is similar, but I'll go into that in a second.
Mm,
So when I ask this question to folks who are not from the Sikh community,
mm,
um, there's almost this idea of it being impossible, like you can't be immortal, or I don't want to be immortal, I don't want to live forever.
mm,
And it's interesting how it can make different people feel just for what it means and what it stands for. And I look at it in different ways. So if you break down immortal and you separate the first two letters from the rest of them, what does it say?
I'm mortal.
Right. Right. So we're a
Wow.
part of that immortality. We are allowed to be human in every way that we are, with our
Mm,
flaws, with our goodness, with our strengths and our shortcomings, and all of the beautiful things that we are as humans. And imperfection is the most beautiful thing that we're allowed to be. So where it comes from for me is about breaking the barriers of what we're allowed to achieve, breaking the box, breaking the glass ceiling, whatever you want to call it, and recognizing that our being that exists inside of this cage of the body has a longer existence and a longer expiration date, or possibly no expiration date, than the body itself. So the idea of being immortal is about conquering our mindset, because that is where our main computer system is for our programming, whether we're feeling imposter syndrome, whether we're feeling, that this isn't the right moment for me, or all of the things that we use as excuses to hold ourselves back. It's how do we override that? And it's reprogramming by making choices. And I'm going to be very transparent about this. My approach and my work is not for everybody.
mm,
Okay. I have a zero tolerance policy for excuses, because those are weaknesses that we are growing. We are feeding into them. We are pouring into them and saying, I know that you are a hindrance. I know that you are holding me back. I know that I don't need you, but because I am too afraid of what my potential could actually be, I'm going to stay in this place of mediocrity, and I'm going to continue to strengthen this weakness and allow it to become stronger where it dominates me. And then I live my life with regret. So I don't believe in that. I don't support that. I think that we have been guided in many different ways, and Sikhi is what informs me as a person and the work that I bring to other people. Be immortal comes from the word akal, which is
mm,
timeless, deathless, immortal. It's reminding us that we've got the ability to be a lot more than we've been programmed to think. So the first principles of that are taking responsibility for yourself, being accountable for everything. All of the things that we think have happened to us, yes, we've experienced them, but we also have participation and contribution in those different situations and scenarios. What we don't have is the courage to look at it for exactly what it is, look at it in black and white and say, okay, what was my contribution in this situation? What do I wish to now do differently? What is the information? And it's not about resentment saying, okay, now my information is because that person hurt me. Now I'm going to close myself off and never let anybody in.
mm.
No. That is growing the weakness, that is pouring into the weakness. It's saying, where is my resilience? Am I strengthening myself? Am I growing my energetic armor by understanding how the world is situated? If we look at it like a game of chess, there's strategy behind it. And everything we go through is information.
Mm,
If we can look at it from that perspective, that I am the student and the world is my classroom. That's what it means to be a Sikh. Sikh is a student. So if life is my classroom, then every moment and every opportunity, I need to be switched on to take away the lesson, not just from the negative situations, from the positive too. If this pattern works, what about it is working for me that I wish to continue replicating? If this pattern doesn't work, what about it needs some adjustment that I might need to trial and error to find that pattern that continues to give me, the results I'm looking for, continues to serve me in the way that I need. So the idea of being immortal is not allowing excuses to enter the mindset, not allowing yourself to break your promises to you. If you
mm,
say you're going to do something, do the thing. And if you're not going to do the thing, don't say you're going to do the thing. That means to you. If you say you're going to wake up at 8 o'clock, do not hit that snooze button. Why are you hitting the snooze button? Because the person you're letting down is you. You're breaking that promise you made to yourself. So if you're breaking the promises to you, how are you going to keep them to other people? So if you want to be better, if you want to be more than you currently are, if you're looking to upgrade the way that you're experiencing life by exploring and dreaming into the possibility of what it could be like to live outside of the restrictions that you've programmed yourself with, that's what Be Immortal is. It's allowing you the space to dream and to actually become more than you currently are.
That's powerful. And as you step into that power, that energy, I can feel that. I feel that inspiration. And the most important thing is, I can feel it's coming from your heart, it's coming from compassion. And I feel that's so powerful because often in my coaching practice, which started in the last year, I found that people are often coming out of that mind state. They often haven't found their dharma, they haven't found their purpose. A little bit, a little seed of curiosity comes out. But what happens is that, like you said, playing big or playing into your full expression of being, we're almost scared of that power. We've almost, I think you used the word programming, and this is something I've been navigating and still navigating. It's like, what is humility? You know, is me playing to my full strength humility? Am I serving others around me? So there's so much to that where clients and myself have been starting on that journey, but then we get to a point where we're like, okay, to take the next stage here is requiring a power shift. So how do you how did you start to navigate as you started to explore your curiosity and with your clients as well? How did you come from powerless to being more powerful and taking that ownership and taking that responsibility?
So is that question to me or to how I help my clients with that?
I guess because it starts with us first. So maybe we could explore how did you personally come to terms with that?
So it has to begin with us. If you haven't found the way out of the situation or whatever that road is, if you don't know the directions, you can't lead anybody else. We're just the blind leading the blind. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that happening. Like the field of coaching is so oversaturated. It's hard to discern quality from people just who have a lot of resources and great marketing. So, for me, my accountability begins with myself. I have to walk the path in order to be able to help somebody else. And that's a commitment to my practice, but it's a promise that I make every day in my faith practice. So I have to be able to honor my word and stand by it. I can't ask you to do something that I've not done. I can't ask you to walk down a path that I haven't yet experienced. So that for me is unethical and immoral. So it begins with us. If we don't know the way, there's only certain information we can get from reading books and saying, okay, well, these are the symptoms, and yes, you kind of fit this bill. Let me try to do this with you. It doesn't work like that. My approach is very individualized. I'm not about mass production. I'm about quality over quantity. And that for me, again, everything about me comes from my faith practice. Sikhi is about quality over quantity. It's about living and breathing and walking the path, not just talking it or idealizing it. It's saying, okay, these are the principles we're meant to live by. Do I adhere to them in my everyday? When I'm presented with a challenging situation, does my moral compass shift so that the situation can now be advantageous for me? Or does my moral compass stay firm and I can navigate this situation with integrity? For a lot of people, and for the majority of people, it shifts because they're saying, okay, this is a moment. Let me just do this thing. And it's okay if I come off my moral compass for a moment, but then I'll come back onto it. Rarely does that happen. Do we bring ourselves into accountability and put ourselves back onto it? Because we start to see the temptation and the benefits of what it could look like if we're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, which is shape shifting and people pleasing and saying, okay, you know, I don't mean this in a crude way, but a lot of people have a price tag. There's a limit or there's an amount that you can hit, which will allow somebody to change their perspective.
Mm.
And that for me is a lack of integrity.
Mm.
So integrity is imperative when we're trying to actually move to make change or to make some form of difference. And I've had to navigate that in my own life. I've had to challenge myself and I failed along the way. I didn't know how to do this at the beginning. When you're in a situation which is very tempting, I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head right now, but there's so many I can't grab one of them. But the idea is that if you're in a situation that in this moment could potentially benefit you, but it requires you to move off your moral path, you have to reckon with yourself and know what that means for you in the long term. Are you truly going to hold yourself accountable and bring yourself back onto the path? The answer for that is no, you're not. Because if you're willing to come off the path of your values, the things that hold you firm, it's like your spine, your spiritual spine. If you're willing to move that and defragment it, then what do you stand on and what holds you up now? How many more components are interchangeable? And how much change do you go through before you find yourself to be unrecognizable to you?
Mm.
How do we find our way back? Is there a way back, or do we just stay indulged in, we call this Maya, in the temptation of everything that seems easy, all of those shortcuts that, temporarily might satiate a particular desire or a need. But is there another way? Do you have the patience to sit with yourself, reckon with your own demons and your own darkness within you, and say, hang on, just because this is an option doesn't mean it's the only option. Do I have the courage to look at other avenues to get me there? There's never just one way. There's a million ways. But we don't have the patience to trust that there could be another way. And the trust is with you. If you don't trust yourself, there is no trust of a higher being or of other people or of circumstances. So you have to trust yourself to say, okay, if these are my values and these have held me firm, I recognize that the environment around me doesn't adhere to these values. They don't even care for them. They talk about them and they wave them around like shiny golden, sparkly things, but nobody actually practices them.
Mm.
You can recognize the difference and discern that, not from a place of judgment, just from a place of information. And then you can say, okay, who do I choose to be in this story, in this moment now? Which role do I wish to play? And if upon playing that role, I change how I view myself, that's not the correct decision for me. Can I still feel as firm in my being and in who I am and the integrity of my persona upon making this decision? If the answer is yes, and you can deal with the repercussions, whether they're positive or negative, then continue. But if you know you're going to come back and you're going to regret that at some point, then pause. Not everything has to happen in a rush. And everybody now is running. Everybody now is so hyperstimulated. They don't have the ability to discern and make good decisions, and they're making an abundance of poor decisions. And they're in this loop and they don't know how to come out of it. And it comes down to patience. But if you've never practiced patience with yourself, then you won't be able to apply that in the need of making a decision.
And so much came up for me there that was so powerful. And that discernment really came up for me. That discernment, I had actually a client and he said to me, I'm betraying my work. And I said, well, your life, how does that sit with your life? Because often, like you were speaking about programming or sitting with ourselves, and sometimes we don't even realize that we have the choice, that we have the decision to make a conscious or creative choice. And often we can feel like we're betraying something in us. But I think when we connect very deeply, and I've certainly had to get to that point of saying, what am I really betraying here? Or who am I really aligning with here? And then to get to that point, I feel that's where the seed can start to begin to grow. So, and you mentioned Maya, you mentioned loops, and of course, some viewers may not be from the eastern side of the world who know the words such as karma, such as Maya. But I'm really keen on starting to explore how your journey with music played into this, because I know we spoke to Professor Surinder Singh in depth how the music, especially with how the gurus tailored this music into affecting not just our physical body but deep into our emotional state. And from listening to your music and documentary Untold Story, I know that you're bringing this ancient, or at least traditional way the music was created back to light. So, how has your journey with music been? How has that helped you in your practice?
It's it's been beautiful.
Mm.
It's I think unlocked parts of me which I didn't know existed. I didn't know they were there ever. And it's continuing to teach me and help me grow, even now. So it's something very, very special to me. It's more important to me than oxygen. That's
Wow.
how important the practice of Sikh music is for me in my everyday, in who I am. And that's my tool, my key tool of keeping myself well, managing my energy, and working through difficulties that I encounter. So I think often in positions of being a coach, people think that, okay, well, you've got your self together. I was going to use a different word. Um, you've got things together, so therefore you must never go through difficulties. No, that's not the case. It's like we're all a work in progress, and we have to be forgiving enough to know that nobody is perfect, and we're all still going to be taking new lessons that life is sending us. And we've not been prepared for them. We've just got to figure them out as we're presented them.
Mm.
And my tool to help me build that resilience, to help me understand compassion, patience. Patience came through the learning of music. I was not a very patient person, and I wanted the results like straight away. How do we get the thing done? I'm here, I'm showing up. Where are the results? Show me. So when you're learning anything new that you've never done before, that you don't have a background in, you're not naturally gifted in, it takes a different level of patience, determination, and perseverance.
Mm.
And it was definitely music that taught me that. So I was not musically inclined, was pitch deaf, rhythm deaf, and really didn't understand the technicalities of music. I enjoyed listening to music, but I never thought I would be playing or teaching or performing, that those things were not on my vision board when I was a teenager. I didn't even have a vision board, but you know. So they're things that I didn't even think about because I was told at school, this is not for you. When I went to music class and I tried to play the clarinet or I tried to sing, they were like, nope, go to art class, do something else, do design and technology or something. I don't even, do they have DT anymore? I don't even know.
To be honest, I don't know either. It's been a while.
So I was not encouraged to learn music at school. So the idea of pursuing a career in music was like impossible, unheard of. It was like, no, why am I going to do something I'm terrible at? And I've been told not to do it. So I must listen because it must mean I'm not good. And here the framing shifted where it was like, okay, there's a difference between what music is and what Kirtan is. So Kirtan is sacred music. And we're talking specifically about Sikh music. That's where my expertise, my education, my experience lies. There's Kirtan that belongs in other traditions as well, like in the Hindu tradition too. But I'm versed in Sikh music. And what I was taught, or what I learned to understand in the journey, is that music from the Western lens is a different, completely different playing field to what Kirtan is.
Mm.
Western music has this idea of excellence, and this should exist for all music. I agree in agreement with that. But there wasn't space for people like me in that space of, the wider space of music. Kirtan is the devotional singing of
Mm.
music, which requires you as a being to express. And the objective is to get to a place of advancement where you're expressing in your own musical emotional connection, which is by composing. So whatever you're singing to, your beloved comes from your heart center in music that you've written that correlates with your emotions and speaks those emotions, but through the sound of vibration and frequency and not through words. So
Mm.
that's the place to attain, is get to the place where you can compose your own emotions into musical language and transcend. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Mm.
I want to know more about this. And these instruments that belong to Sikh heritage that were forcefully removed from the land of Punjab during the years of colonization, that sparked another component of interest within me. I love researching. I
Mm.
love learning and informing myself. When I discovered on that journey while I was studying my bachelor's in Sikh music here in London, um, it was a fascinating, heartbreaking, and just powerful journey of realizing how many layers of work still need to happen, that we haven't had our moment as a community, as the Sikh community, to reclaim these string instruments and the power of singing in the traditional formatting of raag, which was how our emotions correlate through music. That
Mm.
has all changed, in the last 150 years since this massive um, surgical operation took place of removing the traditional music. So the reclaiming has been a huge part of it. And again, that just reinforced my own determination that, okay, even though this is something that the majority of people don't know about, how can I make a contribution? What can I do to help even a couple of people learn about it? It's not about making a mass change, it's about making a difference in some way. For me, that sits in academia. And this is where the inception of the documentary came from, is putting out factual information through learned experts in their various fields and
Mm.
helping to piece together this narrative which has been ripped out of the pages of Sikh history. Music, and Sikh music isn't talked about. The instruments have been erased from our own history. So it's like, okay, a lot of work needs to happen, and not everybody's going to go and study a bachelor's to do this. Like I can piece together this information and help to contribute in a work that will hopefully outlive me and other people as well, where they can come back and say, okay, at least we have this information. What they choose to do with it from there is up to them. So I think it's a huge part of who and how I am and why I am this way, and holding on to things that are important, reclaiming integrity and practices of heritage, and holding space even when the room isn't ready for that.
Mm.
And helping shift the temperature to more warmth, where we can actually step into inclusion, because we talk about in corporate spaces the whole DEI remit. And it's just become a namesake again, unfortunately. There has to be more work done with actual integrity to bring lasting change, if that's what we're looking for. And if making the workforce more dynamic is important to organizations, then looking at cultural nuances that affect minority groups that might be in your employment is as important as taking care of them while they're actually at work as well, because those are the things that fuel us as human beings. And if we know that our work environment cares about those things as well,
Mm.
or has room to care for us while we're working through those things, it will transform how we show up at work. And I love that you asked me this question, because it interweaves us as a person in our existence in the world, not just as a function in a place. So we were in a generation just, like say 6, 7 years ago, where people were serving a function at the
Mm.
workplace. They weren't cared for as beings. It was like, because I'm paying you and you are my employee, therefore I own you.
Mm.
If I own you, I can instruct you. I don't need to humanize you. I just need to tell you what I need and you need to produce it, and that's it. We've learned that's not effective. And there's far more effective ways to actually have higher levels of productivity with less work hours. And it's simply by tapping into the human element of who we are as beings. And every human wants to feel valued and cared for. And if cultivating that environment can happen in a workplace, you'll transform what your team can produce and how they produce and how your organization grows. So playing with those boundaries of of
Mm.
how employees are treated and improving those conditions um, is really, really important and integral in making lasting change and lasting difference. So, yes, for me as an individual, my music is important. If I'm working in an environment that doesn't recognize that about me, I'm naturally going to be detached and I'm just going to go there to do the thing because I need to pay my bills.
Mm.
But all of a sudden, my employer starts to care and say, "Hey, do you want to bring your instrument in one day? Would you like to talk about it with your team?" It's gonna change something inside of me. It's gonna change how I show up. It's gonna change how my teammates communicate with me and feel about me. And when everybody's given the space, it's almost like school, when you do a show and tell, right?
Yeah.
It's literally that simple,
Mm.
but so powerful because when everybody is given space to share something that is joyful and important to them,
Mm.
it allows you to dream into more possibility of what your team can actually do for you because they will then be more vested in your projects because you are giving them space to make a real contribution from their heart as opposed to just here's your role, here's what you need to do, and that's all I need from you. If you want more from them, do more for them.
Mm. And it's so powerful because as a engineer in a corporate space, an American company, doing meditations, doing coaching, even outside my role, it's actually having an impact on people. And so I just want the viewers to realize that the energy, the being that we talked about at the start, it's not like it's limited, like you work on yourself here and there's a row here. It's like the basis of everything. And when we get into touch with that, I think that's where the true magic happens. And there was so much I resonated with. If we could come back to the music and the history we have as well, because this YouTube channel, I really started out of curiosity. I was in my room and I made this YouTube channel about how history Punjabi lore, how the history of Punjab formed, and then my grandparents' journey, and then I was watching your documentary. Sitting with my dad on the sofa, and I was like, wow, I never knew this, and everything started to click together. So if I could ask you to speak into a bit more about this transcendence of this music, the real magic of how the music, the kirtan, the sacred Gurbani works. Because I know we were talking previously about how the knowledge, how the wisdom, it could be like after this conversation, oh, great, I listened to this conversation, now I've got more knowledge, but we're repeating the pattern. So I really think the wisdom, the vibration, the energy is important to have
Mhm.
for this deeper knowledge. So if you could speak into why was it, or what it was that was really taken away, um,
Mm.
over these years, and what was it that you found inside that sacred music that helped you that you would like to share with people?
Mm. Okay. Okay, I'm going to try to keep it concise for
Mm.
you because otherwise this can be a whole like 3 hour lecture for you, which I'm
Sure,
sure you'd enjoy.
I
But
would. But for the viewers, we'll
yes,
keep it clean.
exactly, exactly. So the short version is that when we look into Sikh history, you can read about and see through history and through fact the valor and the courage of how the Sikhs of that time were, how they acted, how they showed up. And even the warriors, they were called Sant Sipahi. And they were not just called Sant Sipahi, this means a warrior saint. So putting those two words into the same body, not a warrior who is a separate person and a saint who is a separate person, which is now how we might identify with these words. And normally when we think of a warrior, we're thinking of somebody who's courageous, who's bold, who's ready to fight and take anything on and, like defend people and all of those other things that we would assign with that name. And then a saint, you would imagine probably somebody wearing white clothes, eyes closed, wearing a rosary, sitting on a mountain or out in nature and in meditation. And we we can identify with those two different terms. But what happens when we put them together into one person? What does that look like and what does that mean? And how does that change your psyche? And this was essentially the programming that was written for people who want to walk the Sikh path, is to have both of those characteristics in one body. So to have the integrity of a warrior, to be able to have courage, to have determination, to have resilience, to overcome any form of difficulties, challenges, or confrontation, and be ready to step into that space, but not from a place of rage. And this is the discerning factor, that a warrior or somebody who is a soldier will generally tap into energy of rage in that space of conflict. And that's how they move. And we, again, history will tell us this as well. Most of the armies and their warriors did not have a strong moral compass. They were out there to do a job, and their job was to fight and to be victorious, which means taking lives. And then a reward for that is that they're paid with fine wines and women and all of those other things. And along the way, along the journey, they're allowed to rape, loot, and pillage the villages or the cities that they're coming across. There was no moral compass. It was like, go do that thing. And once you've done that thing, then you've got free reign to do anything else you want, and you won't be reprimanded for it. Okay. In fact, it was like a form of celebration for them. It's like, here's a reward for you. You can go do whatever you want. And that was from their leadership. Most of the armies moved in that way, but the Sikh army stands out. They didn't move that way. And I'm not saying throughout the whole of history, I'm looking at specifically the time period of the gurus when they were going to battle. So from the 6th to the 10th guru, we can see and we can evidence that there was a very strong moral compass at play. Villages were rebuilt. Raping and looting of villages didn't happen. Yes, they did steal, but they stole from, places of wealth. They stole from the leadership because that was how things were back then. But it wasn't about taking somebody, like dishonoring somebody by raping them or harming them in other ways, or taking lives or killing children and killing elderly. It was there was a very strong, you know, balance of consciousness that they were moving with, even in that space. And we can't imagine what that space was like or what that environment is like, because we've never had to experience it. We can try to imagine it, and then we're going to idealize it from how we live our life and say, oh, but no, that's wrong. And no, but that should have been like this. And they should have done. We can't say that. We were not there. We don't know those circumstances. We live in a completely different world to them. So I'm not looking to investigate that. I'm just looking at this pattern of how this community operated, and how, in somebody who's trained as a warrior, very highly skilled in arms and in martial arts, how can they also be deeply rooted in their spiritual center and move from a place of consciousness, even on the battlefield, even in those spaces of high tension where your life is literally on the line and there's so much violence around you. And that rooting for me is what was fascinating. It was like, okay, there's something here, there's something. And that was what kind of sparked that intrigue in me. And this is what actually began my journey of wanting to learn Sikh music and learn more about Sikh history and all of these things. But it goes back to that. So when I was looking at what it was, and I was like, okay, let me look at their lifestyle. What were they doing every day? And then I was researching and researching. And what I learned is that even on the battlefield, the Sikh army took their musical instruments with them. So at their campsites in the morning, they would sit and they would sing Kirtan. They would sing Asadivar, they would sing the Shabbas, they would do their daily Bhat, their Nitnem, their prayers. This was their routine. Call it your morning routine or your evening routine. They had it going on back then. And music, Sikh music, was an integral part of it. So the instruments were there with them. And I was like, hang on. Like, it sounds a bit wild, right? You're on the battlefield. You've got all of your, your weapons on you, and you don't know if you're going to make it back home after this particular battle or not. But you've got your instrument with you as well. Like, why? It's not by chance. When you've only got a limited amount of articles you can take with you, like literally what you can carry is what you're living with for that whole period of months and months or even a year. But you're going to have
Mm.
your instrument with you. And then there was one particular incident which is mentioned in the documentary of by Babak, who was recognized, like his body when he had passed was recognized because he'd taken a bullet to the face by his instrument on his back. That, oh, that's Babak's instrument. That's him. That's his body.
Wow.
And I was like, this is fascinating. This is not just about getting out there and fighting and trying to take over leadership of a country. This is about something much more. What is that something more, and how and why? And that was where the intrigue began.
Mm.
So when I see what's different about the Sikh community in this world that we live in, it is a massive difference.
Mm.
Massive. Like day and night difference. I was like, hang on, what's changed in that process? What tools did they have that we don't have? And in theory, we've got all of the tools, but in practice, we don't. And then I was like, okay, let me go back to the beginning. The beginning is Guru Nanak, the first guru, the first Sikh guru. Okay. What did they do before they went on their first Udasi around, on their first set of travels,
Mm.
to spread this wisdom and this love of oneness? What did they take with them? What did they have? And the tools they had was a rabab, so a string instrument. Various types of rabab existed in the world at that time. Like I think more than 50 different types of rabab existed at that time. However, they had a new model of rabab created, and that once that instrument, that musical instrument was created, it was given to by Mardana, who was a musician who already played rabab, just a different type of a rabab. So why it was changed, why there was a new one come in and created, I can't answer that, but I can tell you that it happened because we've got evidence to that. History speaks to it. So they had this new instrument created. Then they were writing sacred poetry, which we call Shabad or Gurbani.
Mm.
And that was the wisdom that was being channeled through them as they were, documenting it. And then the shabads that they were writing were written, some of them were written in raag from then. Others later were edited by Guru Arjan Dev Ji or by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. So raag is our emotional connection. Okay, so these three components they had with us. And I was like, okay, let me scrap everything else. And for myself, let me start from there. Let me pick up one of these string instruments. Let me try to learn how Gurbani, how this sacred wisdom is meant to be practiced, lived, and understood, which is through the lens of music, because the whole of the Guru Granth Sahib, which is the living Guru for Sikhs, our body of wisdom that we learn from, that we use to help guide us through our difficulties, is written in musical language, in raag. A raag has two different sides to it. There's a musical side and there's an emotional side. So if we're talking about something as simple as joy,
Mm.
the notes will correlate to evoke that particular emotion. So if you want to enhance the experience and you're singing raag Bilateral, for example,
Mm.
and you're playing that, it's going to enhance and expand what you're feeling to grow that force field of your aura and your electromagnetic field to vibrate in that frequency for you. And this just helps you to elevate on many levels, physically, materialistically, emotionally, spiritually, all of them. It helps with our cellular development, with our healing of trauma, with everything.
Mm.
When we're sad, we listen to sad songs, we listen to heartbreak music, and we want to shed a tear because we're looking for an emotional release. So we already have the information that music in general hits our emotions. And when we're looking at the medicine of Sikh music, and this is how it was put together, that there's 60 different rags, so 60 moods that we as humans go through, that we experience. And now if we're using music as that vehicle to connect with them, to express them, or to even release them, that will allow us to free trauma from our body, from our mind, and from our being, which creates space for us to do more things and to feel better and
Mm.
to rid ourselves of any form of disease that might be coming our way, anything from sleep deprivation to even more serious diseases. These are all illnesses that we encounter in our body. So that's one component of the music. Now, a deeper dive, because I'm such a geek where it comes to researching, I just go deeper and deeper. I'm like, oh,
Mm.
there's got to be more, there's got to be more.
Me too.
And now, as you know, Western research is helping us to discover the benefits of music and how it can rewire our neuroplasticity, rewire our brain function, and how we show up. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is transformational. And now science is proving it. People are listening.
Mm.
But there's a lot of communities that have been practicing this for so many hundreds and hundreds of years and even beyond that. And they've passed it down in their tradition. And because it's looked at from, it's perceived from a faith or a religious perspective, we step away from it
Mm.
and we dismiss it. That, okay, these people are just brainwashed and they're just like kind of going with it, or it's placebo. But when we look now into the science of it, I think I can't recall the article off the top of my head, but there was just a paper I was reading very recently, and it's talking about one of the most profound ways to rewire, or the easiest ways to rewire your brain. Like if you want a complete reset of what's going on and how you're storing data, from emotions to memories to everything, and you want to reboot the system, learning a musical instrument is the most optimal way for you to keep your brain working at full function.
Mm.
Um, we're seeing studies with folks who have Alzheimer's where they've forgotten everything else, but they'll remember a song and they can start to communicate and they come back to life through the memory of that song. So we know how powerful music is.
Mm.
Um, Now in the language of the West, if I were to frame what Sikh music was doing back then,
Mm.
so that we can understand it now, is bilateral stimulation, which again we're using for cases of severe PTSD, CPTSD, and other such trauma that sits in our bodies and in our emotions as well. EMDR is one of those therapies which is wonderful, and so many people are benefiting from it. And it was that got me intrigued, that how does that work? When I broke it down and I started to understand it, that it is bilateral stimulation. So when I'm looking at what Sikh music was back then and how it was created, because there was more than one musical instrument that was
Mm.
created. There were five in total that were created, four strings and one percussion.
Mm.
And our gurus had so much other work on their plates. There were so many other contributions they made, including the sacrifices of their own lives or even their families at times, that they went even further than that to create instruments for us in that process so that we can continue that tradition of being well and being morally rooted, but also strong in our courage, in our resilience, and in who we are as beings. So that programming is EMDR and then some. Okay. And
Wow.
that's a big claim to make. But I don't say it lightly. And I'm looking at history, I'm looking at the evidence
Mm.
behind it, and I'm recognizing the power of playing a musical instrument. I'm recognizing the emotional connection. So playing a musical instrument just by itself, because you're doing two different things with both of your hands, you're going to use both hemispheres of your brain in that moment, because your brain's trying to figure out,
Mm.
I've got to keep rhythm and I've got to keep pitch and I've got to do this all at the same time, and I've got to make sure that it's in structure and I'm not going off key or anything. So you're awake.
Mm.
um, the whole process of meditating or being mindful is allowing us to become present in this moment. And that's by engaging all components of your being, bringing your body, bringing your mind and your soul into this space right now, right here. We use breath as one of the points of activation. So the body is an instrument. We've got sound, which is our voice. This is hitting different frequencies and different pitches. We've got rhythm. That's determined by our breath and our heartbeat. So we
Mm.
are an instrument in ourselves. We don't need an instrument, but those external instruments that we pick up to play allow, what do I say? They help us and
Mm.
allow us to remove obstacles that might be holding us back. Okay. And that was how the gurus used these instruments. They were recognizing there's a lot going on when you're on a battlefield and you're going through so much oppression and horror and violence and tyranny, how do you deal with that on a soul level, on a human? How do you reckon with taking a life or disadvantaging somebody, knowing that there's um there's a bigger story at play here, but in this moment, if I'm on a battlefield and I've made the choice to be there and to fight for righteousness, it's going to mean at that period of time taking an actual human life or more than one. Now that's going to sit inside of us. It's not going to sit in a good place. It can either make us become the monsters, or if we're trying to stay in this place of being a saint and a warrior, we have to move through it. And it was the medicine of music that they were using then to keep that balance of integrity in those beings, to evoke a conscious rage, which is what we call biras, the essence of the warrior, which comes in the Sikh faith. That's not something you hear about in every community. Playing the instrument activates the brain, and then you're generating the tones and the sounds to match of the raag. You're hitting the emotion by playing a specific raag, and then the balm, the soothing, the healing of our heart happens through the shabad, through the wisdom of the gurus to say, okay, hey, we're going to move this through. This is how we're going to do it. So the singing of shabad and the playing of an instrument at this all happening simultaneously. You're keeping pitch, you're keeping rhythm, you're playing the raag, so you're not hitting any wrong notes. And once you stepped out of the technicality and you're just actually flowing in it, and that's where you're opening the space of healing, because your heart's going to start to open and it's going to say, well, I'm feeling this way. And then you're singing the shabad, and that's going to start to provide the ease. And then as you're reckoning with that, it's allowing you to move through the negativity of it. So it's no longer organized in high priority, urgent, important. It's moved down in priority. And it's like, oh, okay, I can do this. It's no longer fight or flight. I've let it go. I've come to peace with this situation. It's not owning me. I'm not disassociating from it. I'm not hiding away from it or pretending it didn't happen or exist, but I'm actually looking at it, dealing with it, and moving through it, and then reorganizing it. And it's not the top priority anymore. And that allows you to not just exist, but it allows you to live and to thrive. And that was the purpose, because those Sikhs at that time were in such a deep devotion and love for life and for all beings. It's unfathomable for us, because we sit in such a place of lack that if somebody hurts us, we cut them off, we ghost them, we cancel them, we don't like what they said, or their opinion is different to ours, and we've just written them off. We don't have compassion for other beings anymore. We don't have space for other opinions anymore. And that's a shortcoming on our part. So for me, the practice of this music has allowed me to start to figure out how to create that space and hold that space for myself, so I can then in return hold that space for other people as well. Sorry,
Amazing.
that was my short version. I tried to keep it so concise. I'm sorry.
Amazing. No, this was amazing. And I think for people listening, I think you mentioned even about this field, and because often people are like, well, why should I do that in the first place? I don't just want to move my emotions. But then sometimes I feel as a coach, well, people sometimes need an incentive. Like, what is it that you want in your life? What is it deeper that you want to align with in your life? And as we've gone through the podcasts, I have a scientific and engineering mindset. So I resonated when you said like the dogma or the brainwashing, because I'm quite logical in that way. And the viewers who've been watching the podcast will understand how the chakras work, how that prana is flowing, how the koshas are working. You know, we went through this all with our guests. And so what I think is very important for the viewers to understand is at this energetic level, how the gurus are combining this wisdom, so this anchoring, with this vibration. How can we step from knowing to actually feeling this vibration, to actually shifting? Because I have clients, and often at the root of a lot of the thoughts, before they generate as thoughts, I notice that the emotion is generating as low vibrations, which are blame, shame, and guilt. And
Mm.
so the I think we can call it alchemization or alchemy of
Mm-hmm.
this emotion can be done through music. I've experienced hearing it, but not playing it. So, in a more technical standpoint, for those who need permission, logically, like people like myself, how would you explain what is really going on here um, at this cellular level or at the pranic level?
When we're listening to the music.
When we're playing the music or when
Mm.
we're um, part of the Sangit or playing this music.
Mm. It's hard to put into words
Mm,
because yes, you've got the scientific or the technical explanation, but it's the difference between tasting something and looking at it.
mm,
So you can walk past a beautiful bakery. You can look at the huge array of different, beautiful, colorful desserts, pastries, cakes, whatever they have going on, all of the different sweets they have. And you can look at them, but it's not the same as tasting them.
mm,
You might have had something similar. Oh, that looks like a chocolate cake. I know what that tastes like, but you haven't had this chocolate cake. So how can you say that if you haven't tasted it?
mm,
And I think having the experience is the most important part of this whole process because there's a limit of intellectual conversations that this world needs. We just need more people actually trying. If you're looking for more, then take the chance and try. Even if that's just finding a moment where you can sit with yourself and find presence within you, or just feel your breath if you don't know what that means. So if you've never done anything before and you're
mm,
like, okay, I want to try, I want to taste, I want to know what it's like, okay, then I invite you to explore that space, find a moment of quiet. It can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be, in a room full of incense with yoga mats or outside on the top of a mountain or, on a tree or whatever, whatever else you think it might be. It can be anywhere.
mm,
Anywhere that you can have peace. Close your eyes. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel your body sitting into your seat. Feel your shoulders relaxed. And just let yourself breathe. Feel the flow of oxygen coming into your body. And as it's coming in, try to imagine if you could see what oxygen looked like entering your body, how would that visualize in your mind's eye? What would it do as those cells merge with your blood cells, as they move through your body? What would it look like? And that visualization is going to be different for every single person as every breath you come in and you're imagining the possibility of the oxygen moving everywhere. And it's not the possibility of you actually are then sitting in the controller's seat and you're allowing your whole entire body to receive oxygen just by having that space of curiosity and exploration. If you just breathe unconsciously, like, yeah, I'm breathing, okay? So you've taken it for granted. This is what we spoke about at the top of the
mm,
conversation. The things that are consistent for us, we take them for granted. The ability to not breathe means only one thing,
mm.
to not be alive, right? So we need oxygen, we need breath, and I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I can always
My
edit it.
mom bringing in jar.
Classic.
I was like, I told her I'd be there in an hour. She's like, no, I come and give you jar. I was like, deliver it. That's what just threw me off because
I'm
it's
sorry.
like she lurked, and I've got two windows. She lurked around one, and I didn't
Oh,
look over, and then she comes over here, and she's like, "Here's your tea."
I might add the blooper.
Yeah, add the blooper. My mom bringing over my cup of jar. I was like, but
Oh,
see,
bless her.
I could take that for granted, and I could be annoyed and be like, "Oh my God," da, 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 da. But it's not that deep, you know. It's nothing's ever that deep.
No.
We get caught up in a moment because we're putting on a facade or
Mm.
we want our projection to be pristine, but it's okay.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
allowed
yeah.
to have these are the beautiful imperfections, you know? And I think just allowing space for them makes it makes it so transformational,
Mm.
allows your experience of life to become more joyful because you're not like constantly keeping yourself restrained, like, oh no, it has to be this way, it has to be this way, it has to be this way. And that's how a lot of people are because they feel so burdened by the
Mm.
expectations of life, people around them, family, employers, partners, whatever it is. That burden is so heavy to carry, and we
Mm.
need to let it go.
And
And
the Japanese call that wabi sabi, I think, like
okay.
imperfect perfection, you know. And
Mm.
it's like, how do we keep that vibe? And I heard it being called a pattern interrupt, where some people, like coaches, will just come in and say, "Hey, let's just interrupt that cycle, and what can we learn from this?"
Mm-hmm.
It's really beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah, like if it frazzled you, then you weren't on center in the first place. For me, it just made me laugh. I was like, I just saw her like peeking over because she's really short. So she's like
Ah,
peeking over, like,
ah, bless her.
it's like the taking for granted
Mm.
can be that as well. Like that could have been a hindrance. I could have got very upset and be like, "Duh, duh, 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 duh." But if that's what happened and that's how I reacted,
Mm.
then it shows my moral grounding. It shows my actual grounding, not just my moral grounding,
Yeah.
where I'm at energetically. And sometimes it can be a moment. It doesn't mean that that's how the person's defined,
Mm.
but it's the self accountability. How do I choose to respond to this situation?
Mm.
And if you can do it with a smile, it becomes so much easier. And it becomes a lot of fun actually, because there's just more fun stories to tell.
Yeah, and like you said about the projection or the facade, are we keeping a facade? Are we, is that ego at play? Or,
Of
yeah,
course it is.
is that
It
not?
is.
Yeah.
Yes, our ego is 100% at play
Mm.
because we're trying to hold this image. And I, one of my biggest pet peeves, and I don't use the word hate often, but I will in this
Mm.
sentence, but the term that I hate, or the phrase that's often used is fake it till you make it.
Mm.
No, no, that's so harmful. It's, I think it needs to be reframed. The intention behind it, I get it, is like just keep doing the thing until you get there. That's what practice is.
Mm.
I was terrible at music when I first started. I was awful. I didn't want to listen to myself, but the practice changed how I felt about it. Now, I wasn't faking it. I was just staying committed. So with anything you're doing, just choose to be committed to it and know that the result, the fruit might not be immediate, but it will come. And when it does, it will be worth it. And you
Mm.
just choose love for yourself. That, okay, I love myself enough to stay committed to this.
बंदे खोज दिल हर रोज 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 न फिर परेशानी मारे न फिर परेशानी मारे
And that's coming from a place of authenticity, not from a place of lack, which is the fake it till you make it. I have to pretend to be this thing and then I'm going to become it. Okay, but how much is that going to hurt you in the process? And how many layers of, armor or, facade and costume do you need to wear to get there? And then can you undo those layers as well? Are you still going to be able to find yourself underneath all of that
Mm.
facade? And if you can't find yourself and come back to you every day, then something needs to be rebalanced, readjusted.
Yeah, and it comes back to that being, like you mentioned at the start. Like, how can we connect to ourselves? How can we relax into it? How can we give
Mhm.
ourselves permission? And
Yes.
as we slowly begin to wrap up, I wonder if you could also share about the deeper concept behind the word Kaur. Kaur, I think from my understanding, Kaur means um, princess. Maybe I could be wrong. You can correct me. And having this, so we've talked about the inner being, having this outer essence, the star. Quite often, I know in the past, we've not seen women in the stars. And what does that core mean? What does the star mean? And I see this rise of women's empowerment. Um, how can we, as all as human beings, start to empower the feminine in ourselves, but also collectively?
Kaur is the name that was given to females once they made the commitment to be initiated into the Khalsa way of life. So, without going too much into Sikh history, um, Sikhs are the folks who walk the path, who are on the journey to try to learn and value the teachings of Sikh history and everything that we are guided to practice. And then the difference between Sikh and Khalsa. Khalsa means sovereign,
Mm,
and it can also be interpreted as pure, and that's not in an elitist manner. It's saying that we're cleansing our insides, we're cleansing our consciousness to come to a place of clarity where we can be strongly centered, and that's the essence of purity we're trying to hone and cultivate inside in our hearts. So somebody who has chosen to become Khalsa means that they've gone through a ceremony to be initiated into the path. And they will wear articles of faith, and they will have a more disciplined daily routine than just a fellow Sikh who's still on their journey, who's still working and understanding and figuring things out. I wanted to share with you when the Khalsa was formed in 1699 by Guru Gobind Singh Ji, they gave the names Kaur and Singh. And these were names of, you could say, rebellion. And they were there to oppose the leadership and the tyranny of the oppressor that was taking place at that time on the land of India. And it was abolishing this separation and division of caste, because caste is something that has hurt the people of India for thousands and thousands of centuries, this idea of hierarchy. And the Sikh gurus abolished that system. And what they did was made anybody who's ready to choose consciousness and walk the Khalsa path, you become sovereign.
mm,
You are given this title of Singh and Gaur. Singh means lion or warrior. Gaur has different interpretations. It can be also called princess, sovereign, and also woman warrior or
mm,
lioness in different interpretations. And this is about the empowerment of your being to know that you're not defined by the circumstances that you might be born inside of, and you've got the ability to be more. So connects back with the Be Immortal by knowing that you're destined for more than what you might be programmed to believe. And if you can undo the programming, there's immense possibility of what that could look like for you. And these are the seeds that the gurus planted. This is the people that they wanted to create. And one of the markers of distinction that was part of the uniform, you can say, for the Khalsa was the wearing of the star, which is what I have here, my crown, my turban. And the star means the hand of God. So to mean that you're protected by the hand of God in all and everything you do. For me, this is a part of myself and my being, not just my identity. It's not just a marker. It's what helps me check in with my own self every day. And I've shared this in different spaces as well, that when I'm tying my dastar, it's not a hat that I pick up and place on and remove, but I tie my dastar every day. And when I do, I'm in a space of a meditation where I'm asking myself, how am I going to show up today? And each layer, each lad that I tie, I make promises. I make promises to myself about how I'm going to show up for me and then how I'm going to show up for you in this
mm,
world. And that helps me stay centered and deeply rooted in my practice of faith, making sure that when I leave my room, when I leave my home, that I'm ready to serve, knowing that this is a marker of that. Back in that day, in that time period, the star was a sign of safety.
mm,
If you were in harm's way and you saw somebody wearing the star, you could go to them without any fear, knowing that you would be protected, looked after, whatever your needs were, if you needed food, shelter, clothing, that they would stand and support you and help protect you if you were in harm's way. And that was the moral compass of the Khalsa. And those values and that high level of integrity is what appeals to me. I choose to hold myself to a much higher level of accountability. Whether it serves the environment and the other people around me is irrelevant. But for myself, I like to hold the standard high. And that is what I resonate with, is saying, okay, am I ready to show up for other people? Can I do that? And how do I make sure I stay grounded in that? So when people see me from my community, they don't see me. They see my guru's mark. They see the mark of somebody who's walking that path of Khalsa, and they're going to come to me, which means that I'm going to be held to account and I have to be ready to show up. Women didn't always wear turbans. They didn't wear the star all the time. Even in current, day and age, women in the, I think, late 90s onwards in the Western world started to wear turbans more than they did previously. And I think that's down to a huge magnitude of reasons. Biggest one being coming to a foreign land. There were many men from Punjab who were Sikh who had to remove their turbans or even cut their hair in some cases to actually be welcomed, or not even welcomed, accepted or tolerated in Western lands at that time. So we're evolving more to spaces of acceptance. I can't say full inclusion because we're not there yet, but in that process of this acceptance growing and people being more receptive to education about different cultures and about the Sikh community, I am, like yourself, seeing more women come into that space of wearing a dastar. And it's not an easy decision to make because it comes with responsibility, it comes with a lot of commitment. And then it also comes with some layers of harm and danger as well, because we're living in Western lands. And for people who are not educated culturally, who haven't met another Sikh before, I'm going to stand out, I'm going to look different. And that's going to make people feel a way and not always a good way. So I've had to encounter those differences. I've had to deal with racism and a lot of derogatory comments, especially near the period of 9/11. There was a lot of danger for Sikhs at that time, even in the UK, even in the US. And the first person in the US who lost their life post 9/11 was a Sardar, was a Sikh in Arizona, and was shot at his gas station there. His name was Balbir Singh Sodhi. So being a Sikh and choosing to look different and stand out and honor our values of faith comes at a price, even in this modern day and age that we live in.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. There was so many components that I never even heard. And it's just that deep respect that one who chooses to don that the star. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom, all of your experience. It resonated with me, and I'm sure the viewers as well, and your beautiful energy. Before we close, what I like to use in my coaching is go slow to go far. And I know Be Immortal we spoke about. So what would you like to leave the viewers with? How can you take steps to go slow to go far, to be immortal?
I like that. Go slow to go far. I like that. That's beautiful. And I think more people need to lean into that. We need to find space for ourselves. And I'll come back to the takeaway I was sharing earlier, which is about the breath in the body. In moments that you feel overstimulated, where you feel like, everything's crumbling down on top of you, the moments of overwhelm or high stress, just take a minute, sit in your body, feel your feet on the ground, feel your body sit into your seat, close your eyes, and feel your breath come into your body as slow as you can, in through your nose and into your belly, not into your chest. So take a big, slow, deep breath into your belly, and then double the time of the exhale. Make that exhale as long as you can. And as you're breathing out, your belly is going to come back in, like your belly button's about to touch your spine. Take a moment to pause in between and do that again a couple of times. And the idea is to slow down and remember that you're safe in your body. Your body is home. You can always come back here whenever you need to retreat, and it's always with you. Your body's always with you. Your breath is always with you. It is a source of power, not something to be taken for granted. Just because we breathe through the day doesn't mean we know how to breathe, doesn't mean that we know how to master our breath to help alleviate stress, overwhelm, anxiety, or any other things that might come our way during our very overstimulating lives right now. So go slow to go far. I would say catch your breath and just remember that you're living, you're alive, you still have breath in your body, and that's something really special to be grateful for.
Thank you so much again. I think there's so many things I could have asked and so many things my being wants to know. But I'm just very grateful for this time to share with myself and the viewers. Thank you again so much. Where can people find you, reach out to you if they want to know more?
Instagram, my handle is jasvir.rababan. I have a website, jasvirrababan.com, and then the corporate website for the work that I offer there is beimmortal.today. So you can reach out to me through any of those platforms.
Amazing. And I'll put all the links below for people if they want to check that out. Thank you so much again. And thank you everybody for taking the time to listen. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you.
At that time, against the tyranny, I can't speak right now, against the tyranny of the oppression. I'm done.
It's okay.
I've lost all my words.
Okay.
I'm joking. These are your bloopers. I'm giving you great content right now. Okay, this is gold.
We could do a separate podcast of the bloopers.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm going to pick up from where I was and let you
Okay.
kind of like weave this together.